hot, hot, hot. And so I often wonder, well, where should I begin? And the lack thereof.
Today's podcast is brought to you by StrongHeartAcademy.com, where no heart is no victory. We are also brought to you by BJJ To Go. If you want to build your game and learn jiu-jitsu, go to bjjtogo.com. Third thing we're brought to you by is Rat Bat. You got rats? Want to kill bats? Kill them with a rat bat. Fourth thing we're brought to you by is hot dog flavored water ingredients. If you want to add it to your smoothie, hot dog flavor ingredient. State your name. What's your name?
My name is McClain.
Cool. How do you know me?
I know you from church. I helped with the Jitsu for Jesus for a little bit. We brought a couple groups of kids from group homes in Phoenix down and ran a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program here. Yep. And yeah, and then we had...
First, I actually met you just randomly at a different charity thing.
Oh, yeah, with the Grace and Mercy homeless ministry.
Yeah, downtown where we were making lunch bags for people. And then you kind of told me some of your story there, that you were working at some group homes. And then I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this Jesus group home thing. Fortunately, it still hasn't worked out. We would get it for a little bit, and then it just kind of dies out.
Yeah, it kind of dissipates, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I don't have a van yet. I think one day if I get a van, that'll help.
Oh, for sure.
But it just hasn't done anything. And then, so I've been doing this Sobrity podcast for a little bit, series. And I asked people in my gym, but really I asked people anywhere anyone wanted to talk to me. So 2 people responded that weren't part of my gym. One was Shane that I did a couple days ago, and then you. And you said you'd like to talk about it. So
yes, sir.
First, I would ask you, so where did you think your the path started that you started to go on that path?
On the sobriety path? Or the
not sobriety, the addiction path? Because so everyone I've asked have had different kind of answers, but nobody has gone straight to like day one, I have a problem. Like it seems to be a slippery slope or a gradual slope into the bottom, wherever you hit the bottom, and then a realization that there's an issue, and then however long it takes you to figure out how to your own way to get through it. So how long have you been sober for?
Completely sober. Actually, today marks 7 months from alcohol. I had slips along the way. Uh-huh. I've been working with sponsors. I go to AA. That's okay. That's my recovery meeting of choice. Okay. From narcotics, I am just over 10 years.
Nice. That's great.
So my story, I kind of grew up in a little bit of a broken home.
In Phoenix?
Back east. Back east. It was in Connecticut. I'm from Connecticut originally. Okay. Me and my wife are both from back there. We'd come out here to do schooling, and she came out first. We did the long distance relationship thing. Wasn't so much fun.
It's hard.
No, it is hard, and it's not fun at all. So I ended up applying to the school, getting in, coming cross country, doing the school thing, and then getting a whole bunch of jobs out here, and eventually working for the university.
Cool.
But so I grew up in a little bit of a broken home. My mom and my biological father split when, I'm not exactly sure, but right around like before I turned 1, or maybe it was before I was born. My dad was involved in substance use, and she didn't want that for me. Mm-hmm. She ended up marrying...
what was his thing?
Crack cocaine.
Okay.
Yeah, and she left him. She ended up marrying another guy several years down the road. Me and him didn't always see eye to eye on things. Mm-hmm.
A different guy.
Yes, a different guy.
Stepdad or
stepdad?
Okay.
Yes, sorry. And in my teens, I started to get really rebellious, and I wanted to do things my way. And I believe it started with like I got prescribed some sort of painkiller for a tooth extraction or just oral surgery of some kind. And I realized, hey, I really like this. Like it feels good. Taking 2 pills instead of 1, 3 pills instead of 1.
Funny, one of the guys that I talked to, actually the first guy, Brennan, I said, I don't think I could be addicted to pain pills because I don't like them, and I don't like the feeling, and they don't work. Like I always feel pain, and he was just like, you just don't take enough. I was like, okay, well maybe that's what it is. I never took more than they told me to take, so that makes sense. I guess I never go, hey, they said 1, I'll take 2. I never did that, but I didn't even think of that. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. But I'd always take them, and they make me sick. I feel nauseous when I take pain pills.
So I
just like I hate the feeling of nausea. Yeah, so I just don't. Now I don't even take pain pills. I just bite down or whatever.
Now I don't take anything. I take ibuprofen and Tylenol, Motrin, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so it started with just taking more than I was supposed to, then talking to kids at school, and they're like, oh, if you crush them and take them intranasally, snorting them, they work a whole lot quicker and you need a whole lot less. So then I started doing that. My supply or my bottle or whatever would run out pretty quickly, and then there was a kid at school that sold something. He said it was extracted painkillers, or extracted Percocet is what he had said at the time. And all right, so I grabbed it. It was cheaper than I was used to having to pay for it. It was like $5 for a little bag, and I started doing it. I started doing it a lot.
Those were pills, you said?
No, it was a crushed up powder. It was a little powder.
Okay.
Lo and behold, a couple weeks later,
what did he put it in?
You just put it on the table.
No. But did he like give you in a bag, or a little
baggies.
Vial, or?
No, it was in little baggies. It was like single dose sort of things. A couple of weeks later, he came up and he was like, "Hey, would you ever try dope?" And I was like, I don't know. I mean, does it feel like this? Because this is great. And he's like, well, it is that. So I had been, So my actual like exposure to dope or heroin had been completely unintentional. I just thought I was abusing painkillers more, and essentially it is, but it's a much dirtier form. And at that point, like, I was young. I was like 14, so the hooks were already in. I didn't care. I felt great. There was chaos at home. I just continued to use and abuse, branching out, trying other things throughout my teenage years, but always like gravitating back towards that. Until I was roughly like 17, and I was still a recreational abuser of pretty much whatever I could get my hands on at that point. And I had moved around.
I'm going to adjust this so you can keep talking, man.
Yeah. I had moved around a bunch and moved down to South Carolina, got in trouble with drugs down there. Came back. I was on probation for an offense with marijuana when I was like 15.
You moved with your mom at South Carolina?
I got sent down to live with grandparents. And then like
your mom thought like that was gonna help you out, or like she's like, I just can't.
We were trying to figure out. Well, she was trying to figure out something that would help me from my self-destructive path that I was on. And I mean, one thing about addicts that I've learned from myself is that I can sniff out another addict like that. And that's exactly what I did. I was in school for maybe a month or two and got busted with tons of different pills, painkillers.
How old were you at that time?
16 at that time.
16, okay. South Carolina, you said?
Yes. And I was with a No, I'm sorry. So I ended up coming back because I had caused a whole bunch of trouble down there, as I frequently did in that time in my life, and I was just too much for them to handle. The school was up in arms with my actions. I ended up in the ER for taking too many benzos mixed with painkillers. My grandparents didn't know what to do with me. They weren't equipped for dealing with the stuff that I was doing. And I mean, I don't blame them at all. I was reckless and I just thrived to live in chaos. Like, I just kept going for it. So I came back and I was working through the probation system. Still, probation wasn't happy with me because I came back on bad terms, and I was living in kind of like I was renting a room, renting a boarding house. While I was,
When you were like 16?
yeah, my mom had taken out the lease with me because the family didn't want me moving back in because of all the reckless and crazy behavior.
Oh, jeez.
And I had younger siblings that they were worried for their safety, and like I said, I don't blame them at all. Now I was crazy,
Yeah.
but that this was the best option that they thought would
At
help
the
me.
time, yeah.
So shortly after I got back, I had gone to a mall and shoplifted a bunch of chains that I was going to try to sell to buy drugs, and I got
At that point,
caught.
you're just taking whatever.
Yeah, pretty
Whatever
much.
you can get.
I was still. I'd
Mainly
come
the
back and I
powders,
found
pills.
a new dope dealer.
Yeah.
But generally I was an equal opportunity abuser.
But like when you were saying dope, like it was whatever, or was it like heroin?
No,
or was
dope
it
heroin.
Heroin. Okay.
That's what when I'm saying dope, that's what
That's
I
why
mean.
people say dope and like they'll say all kinds of stuff. I'm like, okay, well, what?
Yeah,
What
I'm
do you
sorry
mean by
about that.
that? So-
Yeah, it's kind of like a word used to describe many different drugs.
Yeah.
But I had found someone that could supply me with heroin. I wasn't like a daily user at this point, but it was whenever I could afford it. And I went and I stole these chains. Loss prevention caught me in turn. I had a warrant out for my arrest because of all the issues of going back and forth in South Carolina and then coming back because of all the issues I caused down there. Like I said, probation wasn't happy with me. And I didn't have an ID or anything because I was only 16, 17 years old. I think I was maybe just turned 17 at this point. And I got arrested for the shoplifting. When the police came, it ended up that I had the warrant out. I wasn't positive at that point that there was a warrant, but I kind of had a good idea. And I ended up going to a correctional institute for youth in Connecticut. The only one that Connecticut have.
Like here they call it juvie. I actually live by it. I was showing my kids the other day. I was like, "That's jail for kids," and like, "What? No, it's not." I'm like, "Yeah, it is. You can watch." They were playing basketball. You know, it's a little bit less security there. I mean, there's still giant 15-foot fences with barbed wire and stuff, but like they're playing basketball. So I'm like, there you go. That's what's.
See, ours wasn't less security. So in Connecticut at the time, it was the only youth facility.
Mm-hmm.
So it was top level. It was 22-hour a day lockdown. So in a cell, 22 hours a day, you only came out for meals. And
do you get anything in your cell, like a book or anything?
You can get books in due time. Like when you first get there, like you're there.
Just
sit there. You have clothes, and yeah, you sit there. Eventually, you can have if people mail in money to your commissary account, you can order things. Eventually, you'll gain privileges to go to a library and check out books and then return them. Eventually, I ended up getting jobs working in the prison. I think it was working for like 25 cents a day.
Yeah.
And it was essentially it afforded me more of an opportunity to get out of the cell and to kind of start seeing that I was completely screwing up my life.
Yeah. And you were 16 at the time?
17 at this time. When I was.
So you're like really close to the border.
Oh man,
like, you're going straight.
So I was still going
prison,
through. I was still going through all the court proceedings, and I literally got sentenced for my like final amount of time the day before my 18th birthday. And they did that so that I wouldn't end up having anything go on to my
record,
adult record. Yeah. And so while I was going through prison, before I had all this happen, I didn't get my high school diploma. I dropped out. And while I was incarcerated, I used that time to study, get my high school diploma. I actually took the test and got my high school diploma with honors. I got like 3 wrong on the entire exam. And by getting sentenced the day before my 18th birthday, it gave me an opportunity to change my life for the better if I wanted to. When I first got out, I didn't quite understand that. I did about 6 months locked up. Then I was released to a halfway house in New Haven. Did another 6 months in there. And at the end of that, I was put onto probation for another 6 months, I believe. My family was still very cautious and wasn't immediate to jump and be like, "Oh, come move in here." And because of my history, I don't blame them at all. I've been saying, I was reckless, and I ended up.
Did you say you were dangerous?
Yes. Yeah, I was dangerous to myself and others.
You have little brothers and sisters, or?
Yes, I'm the oldest of 4.
Okay.
On my mom's side.
So they were worried you might hurt your.
Yeah, they were worried for their safety, and rightfully so.
Obviously, in theft, that's common with any addict, man. I mean, that's just the way it goes.
Yep. So I think I moved into another rooming house for a short time. I was still abusing alcohol. I didn't quite get back into the drug scene after that point, really. Occasionally I would abuse something if it was available and like right there, but I never went out seeking again. I was kind of just like a creature of opportunity at that point. I had moved after living in the rooming house for a little bit of time. I realized I couldn't really afford to keep paying a rent and all that, and I went and moved in with a friend of mine and his family, which I lived for almost 5 years. And at this point, were
they far from your family, or?
No, it was like 3 or 4
How
times
old were you?
over.
You were already 18 at that time?
Yeah.
Yep.
Did
you get a job, or?
I got a couple different jobs throughout the time. I've done everything from working at a women's clothing store to running a music store to concert security. To be honest, I never really didn't have a job. Yep. I always had some sort of employment and some sort of funds coming in. And when me and my friend lived together, we kind of went off the deep end. Kind of abusing.
I thought it was with your friend's family, or was it your friend?
Yeah, no, it was my friend's family.
Okay.
But me and him basically had the entire basement to ourselves.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
And it was chaos. And we never stayed using any one substance long. It was kind of a mixed bag of whatever we could get our hands on at the time.
Was this in Connecticut again?
Yes, this is still in Connecticut. This is probably 18 into 19, and this is like, we did this for a year or two. My friend started to realize, like, he's got a problem. Mm-hmm. I didn't think I had a problem.
Was he older or younger than you?
He was a couple months younger than me.
Okay, so close to the same age.
Yeah. He decided to check himself into a rehab. He didn't want to live life like that. I thought he was crazy. But it made me reflect and be like, this isn't what I want either. Like, I've been through so much crap already in my life.
And very young still.
Yeah. And I could either...
You're still young now, actually.
Yeah, I'm only 29 now, but I'm a much different person nowadays than I was back then. But there was this, like, pivotal moment where I kind of, like, decided that's not the trajectory that I wanted my life to go. Mm-hmm. And from there, I stopped using it. I still drank frequently, but it got to the point where I wasn't using anything except alcohol. And this is right around like 1920-ish. And
the law's there 21?
Yes, I was still breaking the law,
Yeah.
but I figured it was.
I know. I think my mom said when she was like growing up in Arizona, it was 18 at one point.
Oh, that's crazy.
So,
I never experienced that.
Yeah, I don't know other states. I have no idea what the liquor laws in other states are, but it's definitely 21 here. But I guess in the 70s or whatever, it was like whatever.
Yeah, well, I was a product of the 90s, so it was, a lot of the laws had been established at that point, I believe.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as bad as doing drugs and going and seeking out drugs, and it wasn't living that lifestyle, and like everybody drank, I thought.
Yeah. You weren't going to shady people.
No, we were going to parties and doing stuff, but it was like a bunch of people our age. It wasn't as bad. One thing I can say quite confidently is that I did not drink like everybody else drank. I would drink till blackout almost every time, wake up the next day and have people have to like retell me the stories of what I did, which I didn't really care that much about at the time, but
do you feel like you're just telling yourself like, well, at least it's not drugs, you know?
Yes,
like,
actually that's exactly what
like,
it was.
I'm not gonna go to prison for this, most likely.
Right, and like
you're already 19, you're only 2 years away from being legal drinking.
And I was like, I'll probably get a ticket or something if that even happens. Luckily, that never happened. I never got
a DUI
to the point.
Nothing.
No, I was pretty decent in the beginning about not driving.
Going anywhere.
Yeah. And actually, when I first was drinking a lot, I didn't even have my license. I didn't get my license until I was 20. Okay. Because I was... Knowing how my life was, I was afraid that I'd end up killing myself or somebody else on the road.
Yeah, for sure.
So I just...
And the roads there, I bet, are, like, terrible. Like, ice, right? Like, probably a lot of ice.
Yeah, during the winter.
It's not like... It's already trying to hard to stay on the road without anything in your system,
Exactly, and, like, New England's, like, windy back trail roads and stuff. So luckily, I made that decision. But I noticed that, like, once I'd switch over to just drinking and not even doing it, like I wasn't drinking every day. I never really got to the point where I was drinking every day. But
once you had a few, you didn't have just a few.
I never stopped.
Yeah, until you were done.
Exactly. Yeah. But I realized, like, hey, I have a lot of experience with the drugs and with the people, and I could either go back and make really crappy decisions and probably have a bad life, or I can start to try to help these people. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to try to start helping people. And I went to a volunteer fire department in town, and I was like, oh, this might be a cool idea. I could try this out. And I ended up joining the volunteer fire department there, which was a huge point in my life, because if I didn't end up getting into something, I would have gone back to doing the craziness that I had done before. And I was really, really good at it. I went through the training. They had a academy class. I went through the whole class, finished that up, did Fire 1, Fire 2, ended up going for my EMT, getting my EMT, and then I was working for a couple different ambulance companies and volunteer fire departments. Still drinking way more than I should be, but it wasn't drugs in my mind. And I felt like I was doing good because I was going out and helping people, which I was, but I wasn't helping myself at that time.
Yeah.
So I progressed.
Sometimes it's like, it's easier to go help other people with their problems so that you can ignore
your own. Yeah.
Sure.
And
I've done that.
That's exactly what I was doing.
It's so easy to do that. And you feel like you're doing something good because you are doing something good, but then you're just kind of purposely forgetting about your own stuff that you should be dealing with.
Yeah, for sure. And I was just
that's easy
ignoring
to do.
my own problems and trying to hit pause on my life.
Yeah.
But when you hit pause, it doesn't mean the problems go away.
No.
And they would always
fester sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's what contributed to me having those blackout nights. And then so when I was working in the ambulance, we'd work 1 week 3 days on, and the next week 4 days on, and every 2 weeks we'd switch.
As a volunteer?
No. I was paid EMT.
Oh, okay. I was like,
yeah, no.
That's some serious volunteering, dude.
No,
hey, we're gonna need to take you 4 days out of your week. You're not gonna work or get paid, but we need you all day long. that would
well,
be
the cool
intense.
thing with volunteer fire departments in Connecticut is it's not. You don't make nothing. You end up making it's like $8 to $10 by call, depending on call volume at the end of the year. And every quarter you'd make a stipend, which was a little bit of cash here and there. It wasn't enough to live on.
No,
but that's why I was working as an EMT as well. And so every 2 weeks we would change from 7A to 7P, and it would be 2 weeks on days, 2 weeks on nights, and then flip-flopping back and forth. So whenever we would get off, I ended up having like a crew of friends that we would get off and then go drinking. Or didn't matter whether it was the nighttime or the morning, because when we got off at 7 a.m., it's in our minds, it's our night, so it's fine.
Night, yeah.
And I ended up doing that for a while, but it didn't really last long, because when you're drinking that much and living your life like that with that little sleep, I was also going through paramedic school at the time, so it was working 60-ish hours a week, full-time school, and then whenever I wasn't working or at school, I was drinking. And it doesn't take long for other people to start noticing that kind of lifestyle pattern. And I had like managers talk to me like, hey, you should really stop. So you should slow down. You're a great asset to the company. But I was young and ignorant, and I was like, oh no, I'm fine. And then at one point, we were on a call late at night, and I had asked my partner to switch me just because I hadn't slept much the night before because I had been out drinking, and I wasn't intoxicated at work, but I hadn't slept enough at all, and I asked him if he could drive on the way back when it was supposed to be my turn to drive. So we had to switch mid-call who was going to be the tech and who was going to be the driving, which I thought, no big deal. It's not... I'm doing this so that everything's fine. And when we got back to the station, they pulled me aside and they're like, yeah, that's not cool. You're not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to be coming to work ready to work your shift, which now looking back, I totally agree with them. But I was ignorant and arrogant at the time.
How old were you? 20 or?
At this point, like 22-ish, 23.
Okay.
And they decided to let me go. The manager of the company talked to me, and he's like, listen, Mike, you're a great EMT. You're great with patients. But you need to work some things out in your life right now. And if work those things out, if you want to come back in 6 months, the door's wide open. We're here. We want you to come back. If it takes a year, whatever. He didn't say it was alcohol, but like deep down, I knew it was my drinking and the way I was behaving outside of work. And being the type of person that I was back then, I took that as like a rejection. I'm like, oh, I ended up leaving that area of Connecticut. Really, he had left me with an invitation to come back as soon as I could get myself right. But I didn't see it that way. I saw it as I need to jump ship.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I ended up going back north. At this point, my mom knew I wasn't doing drugs like I had when I was younger. And she wanted to try to help me. And I think she had an idea that I was drinking way too much, way too often. And she let me move in the basement with her and her husband, and I got a job working at a hospital as an ER tech, a patient care tech. So I went through, did that, and I ended up screwing up that job too. It got to the point where
from drinking, or
from drinking, showing up at one time or another 3 sheets to the wind. And them sending me home and just continuing with the constant cycle. Honestly, at that point, I knew I had a problem. I didn't know what exactly to do with it. Through the courts and everything when I was younger.
But drugs, you just stop cold turkey then.
Kind of. I mean, it was... I did less, and then I just switched over to drinking.
Yeah, but I mean, you didn't go to rehab or anything or programs or nothing.
That's what I was just
I mean, you did substitute. I mean, you are substituting for sure. But
well, no. When I was younger, through the courts and stuff, I did go to a bunch of different rehabs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And they just never stuck. I would go, I'd leave early, or when I was younger, they wouldn't let you leave early because you weren't. Exactly. Yeah. But once I turned 18,
you could just leave, yeah.
Yeah, walk out, be done with it. And
I wish there was like a law where once you check into rehab, you're not legally allowed to leave until the days are up or something like that.
I mean, I don't think it'd be that helpful, to be honest, because
really?
I had to go through all the hurt, the struggle, and the heartache that I put myself through before I ever got to the point where I actually wanted help and I actually wanted to stop drinking and stop using. And it's like they call it hitting rock bottom.
You got to figure. I think. I believe that like no one's gonna stop. Like you can't help someone stop. People have to want to stop.
Absolutely.
And if you don't want to stop, there's nothing in the world that you can do to get someone to stop doing drugs or drinking or whatever, like, or any addiction, pornography or gambling or whatever. Like addiction is addiction. You have to just go, oh yeah, I don't want to do this. Then you can say, hey, you can help me now. Like I need help, but I feel like you can't do that. I just wondered if someone had to stay the full time that it would be easier to come to a realization. But you're saying you need the hurt to come to the realization.
Yeah. Oh.
Or do you think everyone needs the hurt, or do you think just for you personally, you had to feel the? Because you've already felt hurt quite a few times. Like, how do you know what the bottom is, right? Because there's always another rock bottom or death or jail, right? Because you were already in jail once, right?
Yeah, but I didn't care, man.
Yeah.
To be honest,
bottom then.
It wasn't my bottom. I'd gotten out, and like it helped me change my trajectory.
Yeah.
But then I slipped back into old ways until I finally like realized. And I guess the part that I didn't really touch on before is while I was younger and abusing drugs regularly, I ended up dying on 3 different occasions, like heart stop, dead, in an ER, opiate overdose. I believe one of the time was alcohol poisoning so bad that my heart stopped. And at one of the times, the doctor was literally ready to pronounce me. They had done all the resuscitation. Nothing was working. He was getting ready to pronounce me and like sign a death certificate, and something in my heart just kicked back, and they started to get the spikes on the EEG or ECG, sorry, electrocardiogram, and
by the way, you're a diabetic this whole time.
Oh yeah, I'm a type 1 diabetic.
Type 1, which
since I was a month old.
Oh, month old. Yeah, I forgot you told me it was like really young.
Yeah.
'Cause I told you once that my mom was a diabetic type 1, but she was like 12, I think, when she got it. But still, like, that's super young. 1-year-old is super young to get that.
It really is. And
you're lucky you didn't have any complications, like even more complications, I would assume, for just like weird eating habits because you're drinking and you're not. And then doesn't the alcohol
it messes with me. During my teenage years, I did not take care of myself at all. I did not do my insulin as I was supposed to. I'm
as a type
honestly surprised I'm alive at this point.
As a type 1, that is easy way to die. Sure, easy way to die.
I have had complications. About a year ago, I almost went blind. I had lost like 70% of the vision in one of my eyes, and I had to go through and get retinal surgery and stuff. But through God's grace, honestly, that's the majority of my complications.
So jail, dying more than 2 to 3 times.
Yeah, it was 3 times total.
3 times. That's still not rock bottom.
Oh, it should have been, but
or it is a bottom, but you had to go another level. You think, or
I just had to keep enduring it. I mean,
until you're just fed up.
Pretty much.
What do you have a defining moment that you would say that was your fed up moment? Because right now we're talking about you're in your second kind of, you were in an ER job and you got fired from that from alcohol too.
Well, that's when I started to realize that I needed help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shortly thereafter.
And you were in your 20s at that point.
Yes.
Okay.
Shortly thereafter, I had checked myself into another like outpatient program where we'd go check in.
And this is all in Connecticut.
This is all in Connecticut. Yes.
Were you still with your current girlfriend yet?
No, I hadn't. We hadn't met yet.
Yeah. Okay.
And like I did the thing with the outpatient program. Kind of like half-assed it throughout the way, if that makes sense, and realized that that wasn't helping me either, because it like offered support, but it was very like authoritative support, where it's like, you're gonna do this or else, and I'm like, I'm here of my own fruition, like, you're not gonna tell me like that. And this is me just being thick-headed as I was, but
and young.
Yeah. Well, I had a counselor there recommend that I check out Narcotics Anonymous, which was the first set of meetings that I associated with. So I did that, and I started going. First, I just checked out the meetings a couple times. Then I started to get involved with the program out there, and I got a sponsor and started working the steps and everything. And that's really when I started to realize that I'm lucky that I was alive at that point, and if I continued doing what I was continue doing what I was doing, I was gonna die, and I wasn't gonna come back that time. And that, honestly, it was sitting in those Narcotics Anonymous meetings is when I really had the full change of heart. Like, I can't
listening to other stories or just understanding through the steps what's going on, because some of the steps are self-realization of like, you know, of making amends or writing a list first, then bringing it to someone, and like, or even, I guess the first steps of knowing that you even have a problem, and then recognizing that you're not stronger than God, basically. You know,
yeah.
However you want to phrase it. I mean, there's different ways to phrase it, but like, that you're not strong enough to do it by yourself. Like, those type of things you feel like recognize you? Or like the stories, like, oh man, hearing someone else say that this thing that they did was like, oh man, that could be me, or...
So it was a little bit of both at first, to be honest.
Or sponsors? Did you have any sponsors?
Yeah,
yet?
I had a sponsor, and he tried to. And my sponsors back there, they did the best they could for me, but you only listen to what you want to listen to.
Yeah.
In the beginning, and I'd hear stories, and I could connect and be like, oh, I've done all those same things, and yeah, I'm lucky I didn't end up doing this and getting a several year prison sentence or something like that, and that's. And then I started going through the 12 steps and stuff like that. And it was a little bit of all of that was what started to make me realize that the path I was on was going to kill me. And it took me several years of doing that. Like, I'd be fully invested in the program, do it every single day, multiple times a day, going to multiple meetings, going out, working with guys that were struggling and people from the meeting and friends, and then still maintaining different jobs at this point. And there started to be a change. The biggest change happened when I met my now wife, but we were in an exercise science class. I decided to go back to community college to get a degree in fitness, and we were just in class together, and we had just started hanging out, and I was still fully involved in NA, but I had started going out and drinking again because I was like, oh, well, alcohol is not a drug. And this is one of those self-depreciating lies where it was like, I knew it was a drug, but I was like...
So when you checked yourself in, you checked it in for NA, not the drinking part, even though at that time you weren't using...
So when narcotics? I checked myself in, it was to an outpatient program. NA is... It isn't... It's not associated with anything. It's meetings that happen at churches, church basements.
It's not Narcotics Anonymous, though?
It is, but it's not like a mandatory program. I checked myself into it.
I know, but you were... At that time, you weren't using any narcotics. You were only using alcohol.
Right, but I knew that I had the affinity towards the narcotics.
Okay.
And then I would try to convince myself that it was okay for me to go drink.
Okay.
Because even though
that was a problem.
That was a problem too.
Yeah.
And even though in the very first 5 minutes of every single meeting it says alcohol is a drug too.
Yeah.
I conveniently forgot about that part every time, or not forgot, but ignored that part.
Ignored it, yeah.
So I ended up driving intoxicated at one point and going to meet up with Hannah, who is my now wife, and I realized I'm just gonna screw up this relationship like I have.
Did she know did she know you had any issues yet, or?
I told her that was something that I never tried to hide because it was gonna come up. Yeah. I went to meetings all the time.
Oh, okay.
If we're gonna be in a relationship or anything, I should probably let you know because it's gonna come up sooner rather than later. But I had met up with her after drinking. I gotten pulled over by a cop at a gas station, and I was in a gas station and a cop pulled up and he could tell I had been drinking, and through grace he's like, listen, I could put you in for DUI right now. I hadn't started my car. I was sitting in the gas station. He's like, if I had waited 5 more seconds and just sat over there and you started the car to pull away, it would have been a DUI. Call somebody to come pick you up and come get your car tomorrow. So I did that. I called her, and we ended up hanging out that night. She, you could tell she was not happy with me, which I can't blame her, but she brought me back to the car the next day, and I continued. I called my sponsor, and I let him know what was going on. I got honest about it, and I got to the point where I didn't want to drink anymore either because it kept ruining other things in my life. I mean, I'd already hit this point where I didn't want to drink, but then I would convince myself, it's okay. All right, that it wasn't it. Yeah. I'm not an alcoholic, I'm an addict. There's a difference. Really, alcohol is just another substance that I was abusing frequently. For sure. So I realized that. I started going to meetings heavy again. Like I said, Hannah had come out here to go to a university out here for a semester when we did the long distance thing, and like I alluded to earlier, that sucked. So I applied to that school, got in, came out here. Now back home I had a lot of friends that were in the NA, or I tried out AA a couple times. At first I thought AA was just for grumpy old men who didn't want to drink anymore, so they went and complained about everything in a meeting. NA kind of had a younger crowd that were kids more my age. Mm-hmm. We would hold events, do stuff, and I just plugged in with them out there. Yeah. When I came out here, I tried finding NA. Now, there's tons of NA meetings out here. Yeah. There just wasn't one that I clicked with. Okay. And I did happen to find a couple AA meetings that were young people's meetings. So it was early 20-ish age guys and girls, and I went in there, felt at home, tried out a couple different sponsors, and had a couple relapses in there with alcohol, and eventually found my way to my sponsor I'm with now, and have been working the program pretty diligently since then. I realized I can't just have just one, even when I try to convince myself that, hey, it's all right, it's cool. Yep. It never turns out okay or even remotely all right.
The last guy I talked to, he talked about the difference in the big book, AA book, says that there's a difference between hard drinkers and alcoholics. Do you believe that or no?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He said some people, or I said in the book, I want to quote him right. I'm going to get this wrong, but he said that some people are hard drinkers, and then one day they decide they're just going to stop, and they just do. And that's a hard drinker. He had a problem, he knew he had a problem, just stop. But alcoholics don't just can't just stop.
No.
They need like more. They need like a program. They need something.
I need something
like steps.
to reinforce it.
Yes, they need it has to be like a renewal thing. I think. I feel like he was meaning like it has to be a constant thing. Like, maybe a hard alcoholic, hard drinker, he's called it, could just say I'm done, and then they're done.
Absolutely.
But other people or addicts can't do that. Like they have to be reminded that they're an addict.
Yeah, it's called the phenomenon of craving.
Okay.
So it's basically like you're saying, like a hard drinker, they can just stop, put it down, and be done with it the rest of their life or for however long. Whereas like when if I go have a drink, yeah, I can put it down that day, but then in the back of my mind, it's gonna be like, oh, I did it yesterday, I can do it today, and then I could have 2, or then I could have 4, or then I could have 6, and no one's gonna know, no one's gonna care. It's an entire, almost like an internal voice that it's not like an audible thing, but like in the back of your mind, it's a thought that like, oh, I can get away with it. It'd be fine. There's not anything wrong with that. Normal people do this, and it kind of just like how I did where I sped up my voice and it's like constantly going in the back of your head. Literally, that's what happens when you activate that phenomenon. And the only way to combat that is to not pick up that first drink. And that's something that took me a while to actually understand.
There is no such thing as one.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's no such thing as a little.
No, there's no such thing as a little, because
a little is a lot.
If we look back into my history, it's like normal people don't go end up doing heroin.
Yeah.
That's not a normal thing. I convinced myself, oh no, everybody's out there doing drugs.
Yeah.
Everybody's drinking in excess. That's just the normal thing. While there are a lot of people out there that do that, that is not the societal norm.
No, that's not normal.
And by me convincing myself it was, that's only proving further to the fact that I was an addict and an alcoholic. And some people differentiate between the two, an addict or an alcoholic. From my experience, they're one and the same.
Yeah.
It's
one just hasn't tried the other yet.
Yeah, or they have, and they just have an affinity towards something else.
Yeah.
It's the phenomenon of substance abuse.
Yeah. What do you think helped you the most then? You're
Honestly,
here in Arizona, you found a sponsor, you had a little bit of relapse, you found people that you felt like maybe you could relate more because they're a little bit younger. And do you feel like that helped then? Like
that
the
helped
people
a
that
lot.
you're with?
Then I got really involved with service work. Yeah. And I finished going through all 12 steps. When I was younger, I never actually got through all the steps. I'd get partway through and then...
So you sponsor someone too then?
Not currently. I'm probably about a month ago, my sponsor told me he wanted me to start looking around and to start sponsoring someone. But it's one of those things where the opportunity hasn't presented quite for me yet. I do co-chair a meeting once a week. I usually go to 3 to 4 meetings a week. I keep sobriety and recovery a constant part of my week. I used to have to go, like I said, every day, twice a day sometimes, just to...
What does a meeting need? Just chairs and tables?
All a meeting really needs is 2 addicts or alcoholics there to start talking about it and talking about the phenomenon and going through the book, or not going through the book. But a meeting happens whenever 2 alcoholics or addicts meet and start talking about it and try to overcome their problem together. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Now, there's tons of different apps and stuff to find like AA or NA meetings. And there's
what's
like
an
I
app?
said,
Do you have any good ones you would recommend?
for NA, the NA app was NA. You just look up NA on
app.
The Apple Store or the Google Play Store, and they have an app. It's
that's cool.
It's a white and blue NA symbol, and it has a meeting finder in there. I believe
what's the triangle with the circle?
That's the AA.
That's the AA
symbol. Yep,
okay.
And the actual app for that, I believe, is called Meeting Finder.
Okay.
On Google Play and the Apple Store.
That's cool.
Yeah, and
it's even easier.
Oh, it's in today's day and age, it's phenomenal. Like, it's all done by location, so you can literally just open the app, find closest meeting.
Yeah.
It'll find one anywhere from like 1 mile to like 5 miles away, and then have an entire schedule for you to go. And then it has the address. You can click directions, and then you just follow the directions there. Like, recovery has gotten easier to participate.
Yeah. You still have to do the
participate
work.
in. You still want to have
the
that.
access is easier, but the work is still the work.
Yeah, and you still have to be willing to want to do that work.
What would you tell someone that that? I mean, so a lot of the people that I talk to, they seem like they were in a despair hole,
when
they
I
didn't feel like they got to a point where they didn't feel like they could get out.
Right. When I finally got to...
You didn't seem like you talked about being in the...
So when I was a teen, my entire time was that.
But you didn't seem like you cared.
I didn't care.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. And the reason I didn't care was because of the substance abuse. And then it got to the point where, I could use all the substances I wanted, and I still would wake up the next day feeling like complete shit.
Would you ever feel hopeless, like, I can't beat this?
Yeah. Every time I would relapse, and especially after I got into my 20s, and once I started getting involved in NA, every time I would go back and drink or do something else, I would wake up the next day, and I'd be like, there's no point. I can't get sober. I can't stay clean. And then
what would you say to someone that feels that? I mean, or does it even matter, do you think?
No, honestly, it does matter, because one of my other big problems was I always thought I was the smartest person in the room. I always thought I knew better than everybody else. And it wasn't until I gave up that idea and that thought of myself and realized that I am by far not the smartest person in the room. And as soon as I start admitting that, I can actually start getting help for myself.
Plus, addiction has nothing to do with intelligence. My grandfather was one of the smartest people I ever met. He was an alcoholic. He went to special meetings for doctors because they wanted to have a meeting where they were still anonymous, and that because they're doctors and they didn't want, and a lot of them still were practicing doctors, and he was still a practicing doctor. He was a psychologist, but he said there would be surgeons in there. It was just an AA meeting for doctors, and that's a room full of smart people. You don't become a doctor unless you're pretty intelligent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it doesn't matter,
how
smart, how not intelligent you are.
No, but what it all comes back to is the lies I was trying to tell myself.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And give up that lie. If you want my advice for what to do, admit you're not the smartest person there, and go ask for help. One of the big things with AA and NA is that you get a phone list, and they encourage you, when you feel like using, call somebody on the list, because they're going to try to talk you out of using, probably meet up with you, and probably change your whole mind about that, instant idea you're having that could, it would.
Do you feel like if you were to call someone and go somewhere, the craving feeling passes?
Yes.
Over the time, because it only lasts so long, right?
Absolutely.
Even if I'm hungry and I want to eat garbage and I'm oh man, I want a candy. I notice if I just wait it out, it goes away. You know what I mean? It's a craving time frame, and if I can make it past, and then maybe it'll come back later too. Not that it doesn't, but do you feel that helps? Calling somebody will get you through the craving.
Absolutely.
Time frame. Until the next craving time frame or whatever. I don't know what you would call that. I'm sure there's a name for that. But.
Well, it is the craving, and the whole idea is the desire for instant gratification.
Yeah.
And you want what you want, and you want it now.
Now, yeah.
And that's
delayed
feeding into the
gratification.
whole. Yeah, that's feeding into the whole thing. Because then, if you can at least pump the brakes a little bit, you can realize, oh, hey, if I go do that thing that same thing I've always done, it's the definition of insanity. Do the same thing you've always done, you're always gonna get what you got.
Someone else told me, said the same thing. It felt like the definition of insanity. I just kept doing it over and over
and expecting something else to happen.
It not to happen.
Yeah.
Every time he's I don't remember. This is the 5th interview I think I did.
Oh, okay.
So some of them are starting to
blend.
The stories are starting, and only one of them's out. So I think another one was supposed to come out today. My friend was gonna do, and then the other ones I haven't even given to him yet. So
okay.
I'll have 3 more to give to him. Yeah. So this is the 5th one. Yeah. But some of the stories are similar, you know, so like some of them are starting to get confused in my head. But
yeah, absolutely.
I just really wanted to, you know, ask people about it and how they dealt with it, and then my goal was that someone hopefully would hear it, even if by chance, and understand they can relate to it and go, oh, you know, that it is possible to change. Like it is possible to change and do something, but you got to do the work, obviously.
Absolutely.
It's not like a light switch, like, oh, now I'm fine. No, like you got to do the work, but
it's
possible.
One of the most important things that I learned through going through the steps and through AA and through the guidance of my sponsor was that it's not all about me. Now, back when I was using drugs, when I was drinking, it was always like due to selfishness and self-serving means. Like I was just trying to do things for selfish reasons, really. And it was because I didn't feel good. I wanted to get out of my skin. I wanted to feel better. When I stopped taking all the focus off of me and started putting it on other people, that's why I do the service work and I help co-chair the meeting, because it's not about me. None of that's about me. That's me helping a fellow alcoholic or addict. When I stop being under my own microscope, that's when the recovery starts to happen. That's when you start to realize, like, it's not as bad as you think it is. That's when you start to realize you can get better, you can recover, and you will if you keep following on this path. And putting the focus on other people is just one of those legs of the chair. You know what I mean?
Is there anything that you would, like, you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered or anything that you would think that really needs to be discussed?
Honestly, like I said, when I was younger, my biggest objection was to going to meetings and stuff was I thought it was like, oh, cranky old men. Mm-hmm. And that was because I was looking for all the differences between myself and the people that were in the meetings. My suggestion would be to stop focusing on the differences and start focusing on the similarities. Because even like looking back, I can see even those stories with the people that I was like, oh, I'm nothing like them. They're old cranky and they're dry drunks or whatever. No, our stories and some of the stuff I heard them tell, there's a lot of similarities. And I just didn't want to recognize that at the time. I was
You wouldn't want to recognize yourself as them, you know. Like,
exactly.
But also you said that you can find a meeting. Like, you could find people that are younger. You could probably find a tailored type meeting of people that are similar to you. Probably,
oh, absolutely.
Right? Too, like if you.
But you got to go looking for it too.
Yeah.
Back then, I wasn't willing to go looking for it too.
Yeah.
But
you're saying if that is something, I mean, it's all just excuses, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, but if you're using that as an excuse, it's a really terrible one, because there's always an option of people similar to you, and like you said, in every meeting, there's going to be people that have the similar stories to you, regardless of what they look like or who they are, their age, gender, whatever. It doesn't really matter, because they're just another addict, right? I mean,
exactly. They're just another person beyond just the addict and alcoholic. They're just another person, and we all have similar stories. It's just finding those similarities.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
well,
man.
Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that covers my story a little bit.
All right. Well, thanks, Meg. Yeah, I appreciate you contacting me, man. I didn't know, I didn't know how many I wanted to do, and I think this is probably going to be my last one, honestly. I don't know. There's some other people I think that might want to talk to me, but I've done 5 of them.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
So I think this is a good one, man. This is a good explaining of it, and hopefully, someone will hear it and it'll help them out, and hopefully you had some advice that'll speak to someone. You never know, what the weird advice someone will speak to me. Even in church, sometimes I'll hear like just one line, and like I look around to see if anyone else did that speak to you, and
but it hits you the hardest.
But it hits you, it's like it's meant for you, So you never know with these things, like what you just said, in this thing, that like might speak to somebody. So hopefully
Absolutely.
something that you said will like ring true with somebody and go, oh man, that I felt that, like that made sense to me.
For sure. And when you do post this, I'll give you my email to attach to it.
Oh,
And
okay.
if anybody has any further questions what they need to do or what recommendations or anything, I'll leave a way for you to contact me. And if I can help you out, I'll do everything that I can.
Okay. I appreciate it, man. Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Peace. Thanks for hanging.
Let me talk for just a second, help me feel that sense of rhythm. Find the meanings in our bearings and discover this position as a stage along the way. Another rung to the ladder, either stalling or you're climbing, and I'd rather beat the ladder. Instead of getting fatter, let the footsteps resume. Naturally, we gradually might stretch out of tune, but integrity's an instrument, harmonious or dissonant, depending on the poison that you pick when presented with a fork before unclear options. Typically descriptive.